Hello innovators, hope you guys are well and welcome back to another crypto outlook. Now I know it's been a while, I've been a little bit busy with some personal stuff and moving home, but we're back and I think it's well overdue at a time like this to be giving you guys another crypto outlook. Now in the previous video, my bias hasn't actually changed from that last video several weeks ago where quite frankly in simple terms, I'm looking for one simple thing here and I think it's on the cusp of happening and that is the market going in for a market-wide collective drop, possibly a crash, if that's what you want to classify it as. I believe we're in the final phases of the cycle. Now, it's key to understand when I say the final phases, I do not mean it's the end, it's over, and that's it. In fact, the final phase of the cycle is often the most aggressive, the most explosive, and of course, alt season. That's really where the magic happens. Now, the key to most cycles is before we get an alt season, and especially when the market's trading where it is now with pretty much everything at a very nice point, you've got Ethereum pumping. XRP from the previous video, we said the $3.6 region could very well be the top. And so far that's been the top. It's held up well. And we're going to delve into that in the video as well. But I think before the magic truly initiates here, we're looking at a market-wide crash, and we want to be setting our eyes at this point in time towards the $110,000 to $100,000 region on BTC, which will become the framework for pretty much everything else. Now, it could be worse, and I'm going to be honest again. I'm still very open to 85K. I don't really think it's anything to worry about here, to be honest with you, but it's something we're going to map out on the charts just as a precautionary level in the worst case scenario. But honestly, 100K seems to be the level at the moment that I'm heavily anticipating and can see as a more realistic manner. This is a very exciting time. Now again, do not be scared by what I'm telling you now and what I'll be showing you in the charts. I think this could be the last opportunity to buy and get yourself positioned for favorable profits and favorable returns. You do not want to be buying right now. Everything's been pumping. But from the last video, we've really just been in a collective range on BTC and holding our overall level very well. So as the altcoins now begin to catch up, especially Ethereum, this basically tells me they're doing something that we always look for. That is BTC up there and the altcoins catching up to that classic equilibrium to create the pyramid of self-destruction. I've taken collectively now around $100,000 and just over that in realized profits. I'm going to be showing you my live account again for one of my portfolios on Kraken, but I've still got around 100K in unrealized as well, which I am more than willing to leave running all the way back down to the ground. So with around 60K extracted on one portfolio and around 40 to 50K extracted across various others, my goal really at this point is just to slightly protect myself because I think the worst is coming before the truly beautiful finale of the season takes place, moving into the end of the year. So I've protected myself and extracted a bit of profits, more so because if we get this drop, I want to dump all of that back in. And of course, I've already mapped out all the levels in preparation for this. So I think a bit of protection here is warranted. And I've purposely shown you this and will continue to show you this just so you know I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I don't want to say I think the market's going down, but then not take profit. That would just be foolish. But from what we're seeing so far so good. So jumping into the charts, first and foremost, I apologize for the lack of crypto outlooks. I do not apologize for the lack of videos because I've been keeping up with 2 every week. But just a simple explanation, the past 6 videos that I've dropped were all recorded in the space of 2 days. And that's because I've been in the process over the past few weeks of moving home in Dubai. So I knew I wouldn't have time, so I had essentially 2 days to get as many videos done as possible to stay as consistent as possible for you guys. And I appreciate all of you for the feedback. I'm now pretty much settled. So naturally, the first thing I'm going to do is jump into a crypto outlook for you guys. I'm also going to be traveling over the course of the next few weeks, back and forth pretty much till the end of October. I might even do some vlogs. Let me know what you guys think of that idea. I was thinking to maybe vlog the journey, show you a few things here and there, because I haven't traveled in a while and I do like to travel. Now, secondly, jumping straight into the charts, let's just break down my immediate thoughts and we can then go into this after. Right now, I think we're at the end phases of the cycle. Now, the key to understand with this is not to get scared. When I say the end of the cycle, I mean the best is yet to come, in my opinion. But I think we're at a crucial area here where the market could be experiencing a key turning point. essentially the final shakeout before we truly go into the final explosive phases. If I am wrong, which of course I very well could be, the final explosive phase will happen now, rather quickly, and Ethereum will pave the way for this. Now, going back to the previous video, nothing has actually changed from what I've been covering, and we've seen a good few things play out. You know, BTC holding the levels very well. I've slightly refined some of the zones as well. Total, for me, still within the same region. In fact, from a weekly basis, we've only just started getting that push up higher. This zone has really been holding up a treat. We've refined this for members, but I've left this the same for you guys, because I still think there's a great chance by the end of this month, most importantly in 7 days, we could be experiencing a pullback of some sorts. Now, Ethereum's the real star of the show here, and we will get into that as well. But from the last video, we covered that pretty much from around 3.6, I had a pretty good feeling XRP would start to pull back down. And we basically saw almost a $1 drop from that very level. And as always, XRP plays a key fundamental role in this picture. Ethereum is the one I'm going to be a bit open-minded to here, but in simple, short, sweet, and very sexy terms, I think we're going to pull back. And one of the reasons for that is not just the technicals and the fact our levels are holding, but also because of what's been initiated over the past few weeks. Now, in theory, from the last video, nothing has actually changed. And what we need to examine here is BTC first of all, and look elsewhere to see if there's signs. The two signs that always play the strongest role for me in these sort of areas is BTC and XRP. So we're going to quickly remove this and create a miniature zone, just so we can see exactly what's going down in this area right now. And we're going to make this green just to stand out. Now, throughout the course of this several week chop, which really initiated from around the early weeks of June, BTC has remained in a key critical range, and we have now officially come in to finally swipe the highs of this range. Now that this high has been wiped, this is something that I've been heavily waiting for and anticipating with members inside the app. Now that we've got this is one of those, in my opinion, textbook characteristics that we begin to see where a market-wide reversal can come into play. In fact, it's not necessarily any different in any way to a very similar predicament over here during Trump's inauguration. We've been raging for a long time. And throughout this choppiness that's occurred, the whole market as a collective has not necessarily remained idle. In that period of time, I've had two coins basically go to 100% plus, two altcoins that we purchased. At that very moment in time, as this is all initiating, XRP pumped ahead of time as well. And Ethereum is now the final one to catch up. Now, I've been quite vocal on F that inevitably it is going to start to rip up higher. I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting it to go this high. More so towards these highs and maybe take them out towards 4K. But now that we're here and this has happened, I think it's really simple. I think the BTC congestion is already a very clear indication that we are on the cusp of a turning point. And this can also be illustrated by the fact we've now been rallying since April. So I think inevitably a pullback and cooling off period is necessary. And the altcoin pumps we've seen are, quite frankly, an explanation of this as well. Because as always, I call it the equilibrium. I think when BTC reaches a point where it's going to start reversing and pull back down from, and for now, I'll get to the targets in a moment, or rough areas of the targets at least for you guys, I think we're going to pull back to at least the lower end of the $100,000 region, and basically to $100,000. That's the kind of area I am looking at the moment. Now, for this to become a reality, you of course cannot plausibly have at such high prices on Bitcoin, altcoins trading at lows. This is one of the reasons why in the offset, I bought altcoins and invested over 100K and even more, as a matter of fact, because I had a feeling if this was even going to be a considerable factor, we must see altcoins pump first. Now that Ethereum is making this move, it's the only one where there's a gray area for me, because two things can happen with Ethereum. BTC for me is ripe at the cusp of a turning point, I feel. Again, I could be wrong, but this is what I see. I see this pulling back down. And in the previous video, I mentioned that XRP pumping is a danger sign of this, because now that this has slowed down, the rotations have taken place, which is very, very exciting, because If this is the case, we have now seen a collective catch-up, an equilibrium in many ways resustained and fulfilled for the market to fall down collectively together once again. And this is going to open numerous opportunities for us. Now, in terms of where I can approximately see cycle completion at the moment, it's mostly in the window and region for me around this level here, $140,000 to $150,000. Now, one of the key forces behind this is the total market cap chart. And again, I've been very vocal on this particular chart because the key differential between everything here is that I think total will go to 5 trillion, as you guys hopefully know by now from watching the very first video where I covered, I think there's going to be an alt season. And I think total needs to hit this trend line. And this is probably our greatest indication that we still have more to go. But before that happens, I do believe the market is going to experience some form of pullback to recool, reset, and continue the leg. Now, if this is to come through how I project, that means exactly what I have been saying over the course of the past few weeks and months is I think the cycle at the moment, I'm not a timeline guy, but looking at what we currently have here, if we see a reversal from this region, I think it creates a perfect timeline to then see an end of year recovery in a very aggressive manner. And as always, the cycles never truly end, or even just in general, a top is rarely ever formed without some aggressive, sexy, juicy bullish candles. And we can actually see that just evidenced on the charts here anyway on a monthly time frame. So let's just say I make these green. You know I don't like using colors too much, but the key characteristic of every real significant top or even cycle top and bottom is a rather large series of candles that begin to come through. So we can see this here, where obviously in 2017, this was one of the largest candles. It was more of a steady growth, and then boom. Over here, the candles start getting bigger in a collective of 3. We pull back down. Candle, final bullish candle, peak. Over here, 2 aggressive pumps, we roll over. Over here, 1 Goliath pump, over. And we're in a very similar situation here where we've almost seen, similar to this sort of region, a pump of some sorts in 2 candles on the monthly, bit of indecision, and an aggressive rally higher. So with that in mind, and also going back to a very simple grayscale color theme, the key to understand here is we are now in a monthly reversal region, I feel. And now that the market has broken a psychological level on the total market cap of $4 trillion, we now need to be watching for the very real possibility that the market can pull back down in the next 17 days. We have just over 2 weeks here to see a pullback. And of course, we need to take this into consideration because, as always, I like to look at the idea that if the initial half of the month is aggressive, and we've now taken out the previous monthly high, and we've seen a catch-up take place across the board, you will also note here, XRP has not made new highs. That tells me, at the moment, XRP is probably topped. And what we may see is another rejection of these highs, but inevitably my eyes are fixed here, as I said in the previous outlook for XRP. I'm basically looking into the kind of $2 region, let's say, around 2.20 to $2, and on the lower end around these regions. I think for the safe play here, what we're currently seeing as this all takes place is a rejection of the highs. We've broken down and we've come back up to reject. And between this area from where we are right now, I think as Ethereum takes the wheel, if BTC is about to drop, XRP should easily get back down to $2. We've seen the case officially end and it's done nothing. And as always, we don't pay attention to narratives here. And as a matter of fact, I've not really seen any form of fundamentals or news or paid attention to any of it over the course of the past few weeks whilst moving. But the analysis has been flowing quite nicely for the members especially. So I'm just going to stick to it and use that distraction as a benefit to really just avoid any form of news, because I think the technicals are a great indication. But the key here is something I've said where I personally feel Ethereum is going to go to $8,000 to $10,000. And at the moment, one of the clearest structural alignments for that is the fact that it kind of mirrors total. It mirrors total very well for this trend line. So the likelihood is, and if you really go back to the previous videos, I've been very open with my idea that F suppression will not remain forever. It's just a different cycle of rotations this time where, Solana's taken the forefront. People are talking about Sui, meme coins have taken over, but F is not a dead project, and we can see that now. But the problem is everyone now sees that. So when everyone sees that, we need to think in that contrarian view, because the likelihood is there's a lot of not a likelihood. There is a lot of euphoria in the market right now. And as always, minus this question mark, which I'll get to in a moment, I think we need to get to there, 8 to 10,000. I think total is going to go to 5 trillion, if not a little bit higher. I think before we get there, and also BTC, at the moment, that would probably be around the 140, 150k region. But there is also a very important factor here, because BTC has been congested and chopping in this region. This is all where the rotations are taking place, but structurally, this kind of has a bearish theme to it at the moment and a bearish vibe. We've liquidated the high, we've liquidated the low first, we've come in to take out the high. This is going to be a very important weekly closure for BTC. And minus a bit more foreplay, in the upper end of the $125,000 threshold, if I enlarge the BTC chart, I'm really interested at the moment in the logical scenario. For me, the logical pullback is around $108,000, call it just below 110, to these lows here. This is if we just see a modest pullback. This is without, maybe there's bad news that contributes to it, but for me, this is a healthy, completely plausible trendline break and rejection, and I'll show you the trend line in a moment, but I don't think this is anything out of the ordinary, and is really the key area I'm currently looking for the idea to ramp up my buys and sells. To explain that further, I will go over to, we've also just cleared a ton of liquidations above. There's not really much left besides what's down below. The largest wave was there, and the second largest wave is here. Now, I had a short on BTC from around $118,000, and I held it through and closed this out here because we were looking for a drive back up to $122,000. I haven't re-entered short, although I was looking at the $124,500 region, which is what I gave to members and have been tracking to potentially take a short. However, due to being in Dubai, this came through at 4 in the morning, so I've missed that, unfortunately, and it does look very, very good right now. But more importantly, I've closed that short position in the meantime and realized some more profits. So I want to show you guys that as well, just as a form of transparency from the previous video. So looking at my current balance here, just over the previous month, you may recall in the last video I'd done, it was up around 130k for the month. So we've obviously dropped a little bit now. But at a height, we was up on the portfolio after, taking loads of money out, withdrawing, doing all sorts of stuff, investing elsewhere. We hit a high of around $535,000. Now, on this particular portfolio, I've realized $60,000 of profit, and I still have essentially 100k in unrealized profits running, which I'm more than happy to leave running back down to where I bought, if not lower. Because my goal here really is quite simple at the moment. I've been looking to just grow my fiat holdings and make sure I capitalize on these current pumps, at least in some way, shape or form. Finding a real fine line and balance between leaving enough of a position running, just in case we absolutely send it. And obviously, if it does still send it at this point, with the current holdings alone, without really being fully invested, I should be seeing between another $500,000 to $1 million, I would say, just from this portfolio alone. Collectively, across different portfolios, I've realized 100k in profit, maybe just a bit more in total now. So I'm more than happy to have banked 100k at this point while still leaving somewhat of an equivalent amount running across the board as well. And I'm very happy with that positioning because, as always, as covered in other videos, non-chart related, taking profits in these regions for me is absolutely key. I never leave it down to faith, and I don't think being greedy is necessary here because you want to be protected every step of the way. And I think with the peak we've currently reached, and I may take a bit more, but from the current drive we've seen, I'm happy to extract what I've done so from this level, but I will not be looking to extract any more really. Because if we do explode higher, I want to make sure I'm holding as much of that as possible. So I had 160k remaining on this portfolio, and I basically bumped that up to $224,000 just to give me more firepower if we see what I think is going to come through next. And we can kind of zoom out as well to show where we were. So at the lows of where I started reinvesting back into the market, where I put the kind of 100k plus that was in USD back in, the portfolio was sitting around $374,000. And around that time I recorded, you can see we were sitting there around $535,000. So from a profit and loss basis as well, we can see at the kind of peak of this move, we hit around the 116,000, which I'm sure was a little bit higher for the month, but I guess cumulative P&L across both positions reached around $117,000. So in theory, 50% of those profits have been realized. That for me is fine because of how low I bought. And to see, to see a jump of that size, I'm more than happy to see that, quite frankly, because it shows me already, if I go back to the value, if this can happen here from 374 to 535, knowing we are not actually anywhere near my full upside targets, essentially imagine the equivalent of the F 8k 10k region. That's the equivalent of where I'd be looking for other altcoins as well. So this would easily multiply another 5-10 times at the very least, I would say, even at my modest targets, let alone where I think we will actually go. So I'm very happy with my positioning, and of course I just think it's right to show this because I want to back up what I'm saying. If I tell you I think the market's going to go down, I want to show you the decisions I make based on that. I'm not an analyst that just says, yeah, I think this will happen or that will happen. No, I will put my money where my mouth is and just ensure that I execute based on my thoughts and beliefs. I'm not going to tell you we're going to the moon and just not act on it, basically. The same way I said I think we were going to go higher and bought, I do think we're going to go lower, temporarily. So I've made sure I've sold some as well. So we're in a very good position. Profits overall are great. Realized profits are great as well. Now going back over to this with this idea, well, the first real area I want to assess as a potential catalyst for a reversal is really between these two regions. And the reason for that is because of where the market's currently trading. There's a massive weekly trend line here. And this was also why I got out of the short. I was only a 4k profit on that short. I wasn't going crazy, but I banked 4k on the short and just said, I'm not going to take a long because I was moving as well. I just don't really like to trade when I'm not fully attentive on the charts. So I closed the short out and now we're here. The key to understand with this, and I think it's a really simplistic approach to decipher what I think is going to happen. I don't think we've seen an alt season yet, to be honest with you. If you really look here, this is not an alt season. Maybe on some coins, but to get here, I think that's where alt season is situated, up in this region. And BTC does not necessarily need to go much higher to create this. Now XRP, I know you guys don't like this, but it has played out well from what we've said. So I'm going to continue where I left off. My thoughts are, there's two key regions, and this needs to really be understood, excuse me. The worst case scenario, worst case, let's say full blown, I'm not going to use the word black swan, but let's just say something bad is going to happen. The shakeout regions we need to consider first of all, a logical safe play is around this level here, 110 to 100k. If something very bad happens, this is the area you want to be watching for, back down at the lows, in that kind of 85 region, down to 80s or so. That's the worst case scenario. I wouldn't say it's anything that bad actually, because now that these have caught up, it could happen. And I think if we see the worst case scenario, I'm not really looking there. Quite frankly, I'm happy to see 100k, it should be enough. But in the absolute worst case scenario, which we must always prepare for, just leave it there in the back of your mind. I'm not saying it will happen, but if it does, just know where to look. And this is where we would look in the worst case. And I think irrespective of which level comes through, this will break this bullish trend line. This is on the cusp of breaking if we see these targets. The likelihood is this will confirm the end of the trend, so to speak. And as always, the market will likely pursue a rejection of that trend line before actually collapsing back down. So irrespective of the levels we hit, I think this will then lead to an end of year rally that will bolster us up at least into these regions, hopefully in the November-December window. And the quicker we can crash, within one of these two levels, the more aggressively I will buy naturally as well. But the more aggressively we will likely recover and create those series of very bullish candles that finalize the cycle. But with where we are here, knowing that the first half of the month has been bullish and we haven't truly progressed higher on Bitcoin, I think the other altcoins have caught up for this. So naturally, if we get this, we're probably getting this on Ethereum, just below 3K. We're probably getting this on XRP. And on total, if I go over to the weekly time frame, this is just one big possible wick at the moment. If this pulls back down, we're probably going back to $3 trillion. And to be honest with you, I like the idea of this because we're at key psychological regions across the board in theory. BTC, new all-time high just printed. Everyone's going crazy, of course. You actually want to see this before a drop. It's ticked a lot of boxes for me. Total market cap breaking through $4 trillion. You know, these are narrative generating mechanisms for me. F near 4K, F near 5K, sorry, as a matter of fact. And well, XRP is XRP. But plausibly, the safe zones are here, and I say safe zones because it's nowhere near unrealistic or crazy. As a matter of fact, 100K, psychological level. Total market cap, 3 trillion, psychological level. F3K, psychological level. XRP, $2, psychological level. In the worst case scenario, once again, same as total, you know, if we really see something awful, probably something like that absolutely bolsters. But realistically, I'm just keeping my eyes around 3 trillion at the moment, if not down to 3.5. I think that's worst case scenario, very possible. And if we get it, I'm only really highlighting this because I know it will lead to a lot of fear if it happens, but it's nothing to fear. It will, and whatever the next drop will be your last chance to buy for this cycle, I feel, at a favorable price that's actually profitable. Of course, unless you're a psychopath, you wouldn't really want to be buying this here, or even buying this here, to be honest with you. You know, if you look at Ethereum from bottom to top now, it's around 200%. If you duplicate that to buy here, you're making 70%. So you're essentially going in for buys at all-time highs to make a 70% ROI. We made that at the click of a finger in the space of 2 weeks on 2 coins at their equivalent lows. You know, never chase what's pumping. It's not even worth the money or the risk, to be honest with you, because there's greater opportunities elsewhere. Now, in the worst case scenario, worst case, which needs to be highlighted, 2.7 to 2.4, that's probably F back down there, 1.4, and XRP back at $1. Now, if that all happens in one go, fantastic stuff regardless. But I think the key here to understand is I think XRP is peaking and has peaked. I'm still open to the $4 region, but if that's going to happen and we see this move and then BTC climb up to 140, 150, and let's say the modest levels are 3.4 to 3 trillion. Let's disregard the, dare I say the word, black swan situation. Let's just look more at what is, for me, a very plausible pullback at this point. Wipe out euphoria, liquidate everyone between this range here. Should we see this and then the continuation higher comes through? Well, XRP's done a lot already. Realistically, let's be honest, it's done a lot. And it's taken out the high. It's currently rejecting those highs. So what could XRP do if this situation, which I think will happen, comes through? Well, the first place to look is back at $2 to 1.9. And when that upside move comes through, I've said this already, but I don't think it will do much more. I think the first thing you want to consider is it will reject, form a retracement, and prepare for the next leg down. If you're lucky, you get the extra pop to $4 as the final liquidation squeeze. The key one that needs to bring this all together is Ethereum. And I think if we see this between possibly 3K, this could lead to the final drive up to there for Ethereum. Maybe first of all, let's look at 4K. Let's not be crazy, but let's just say from here up to there, if not factoring in the same squeeze, I think F will be the fundamental role, and all of the altcoins that look more like this, the mid-low caps, I think will be the ones to follow through next. Very similar to XRP in the 2021 cycle, which is exactly why I've just realized a bit of profits as a protection mechanism. But I think realistically, if I can see many of these altcoins align with a possible projected target, this is where I want to be ramping up and getting that 200K back into the market, essentially. I think that's really the first area I want to be looking. And it's really beautiful because seeing this trend line break will generate a lot of fear. But I know 90% of the time, the market revisits a trend line. So this will already be confirmation of the end in theory, but the end does not come through immediately. The market often seeks to revisit that trend line to then inevitably collapse. And the 100k area is a real great sweet spot for it because it ticks that psychological fear threshold. Going from 120 or so to 100k, people are just going to shart their pants and it will cause a lot of capitulation. If you look at the market here, we're at a kind of phase now where everyone's just going back into full-blown long and buying mode. Shorters have been wiped out. No one's really looking down again, which is, of course, where you want to use the technicals and key regions to just understand the implications are nowhere near as bad as it seems. And what an opportunity that will be if we could see such a situation unfold. Now, Ethereum, last but not least, the only question mark I have is if BTC starts to hold this level, and I can't truly gauge this because it's in an area where normally, let's be honest, the same as XRP, you would expect some form of high wipe and, 5k psychological number, reject the high, crash down from there. It can happen, and maybe it will, but I can't say for certain because there's not really many technicals up in this region. The only thing I can see at the moment is obviously BTC's now entered my danger zone officially, and it was already from where we first were looking. We've just come in to take out the high. XRP is already in the danger zone, again, minus what could be one quick wick on a monthly, which is just the profit-taking area if you're not already taking some profits. F is the question mark, and two things happen here. If BTC starts to drop into my targets, F may fall short of this high. It would just be the ultimate troll, essentially. And I think if that happens, do not fear. That's going to be one of the stronger signs that it's whatever it does from there, it's going to absolutely godsend straight back up. And I wouldn't fear any shakeout here. In fact, we've never really seen in an alt season it take off without a pullback. And that's the key here. This month is going to be really, really crucial for us because look at BTC. It's already giving us a sign. It's taken out the monthly high. It's come in to reject that trend line again. So, of course, we can already see over the course of this month to next month, at least pulling back down to that level is completely plausible. And in the next 17 days, if we see that, you're going to see a very sharp drop rapidly and a lot of fear created and generated, same as XRP. Total has breached higher. So what could this mean for total in this area? Well, if we go to the monthly time frame, it's very important to note that it does mirror BTC in many ways. The only difference is the previous monthly here closed below that high, which we know is frequently a very dangerous sign, as I showed over here. You drive up, come in. If this closes as a wick, it's hasta la vista, and we should easily get that sell-off. As always, similar to these situations, not this one, but more this one, I don't think that marks the end. I think that's the final shakeout in an overall very bullish trend that leads to the finale up there. That's where you want to be looking at exiting the market, I would say. But you, of course, should be looking at taking some profits regardless. You don't want to be greedy here. F, you can be a bit open-minded. Maybe it gets the high wipe. But irrespective of that slightly uncertain factor in this area, if BTC drops from where I think, which is basically around here, F falling short is just the troll, because you know what everyone's doing. They're going to be buying, long in for the breakout, and perhaps it doesn't come, which would just be hilarious because everyone will sell in a panic, lose faith in Ethereum, and then boom, F godsends for the finale. Same as XRP. Dropping down to here, if not there, will create massive fear and a loss of faith. The rally will bring in buyers. Even from there, it will just bring everyone back into the market, and then hasta la vista. We come down after. At the moment, $2 is my logical area, and the same goes for Ethereum. But irrespective of whether or not it takes out the high, I still think this will start to drop from around these regions in that 5k threshold as well. The big focus right now, to keep this even more short and sweet, is how these monthlies are going to close. And if we are going to see a pullback, I would say from pretty much these key regions right now, that's exactly where we want to be looking. What we also have which may be a little piece to the equation, is the overall trend here as well. Previous month not only held the high but rejected. So this could be one of those massive, disgusting wicks. And in 2 weeks, a lot can change, because in 2 weeks, the rally came up. So if you look at these high wipes, this can all be easily engulfed very, very quickly. But I must say it's very exciting here right now, because if we can see these pullbacks, and why I'm so heavily focused on this is because it's essentially key strike points we can look to capture prior to a very, very large upside reversal, I feel. Again, is BTC worth the risk even in this situation here? Not really for 40%. Is it worth it there for 70%? Not really, no. Is XRP worth it for 70%? And also pay attention to this. The numbers of percentages are very similar. So you can kind of see that that move from there to there, if not up to there, does not really provide much on XRP. I know 70% is a lot, but my point is a lot more can be offered from other pairs that are not trading at the prices BTC and XRP is. So even seeing that correlated bottom leading to the same percentages almost shows us that BTC can go to 140 and plausibly XRP may only go back to that level. And if you're lucky, you get 100%. But let's say Ethereum comes back to 2K, 2.6, 3K. It's not the greatest percentage for such a large move, but it's arguably more favorable. And the coins I'm looking at that I've just bought and taken some profits off, well, they're more in the region of 500 to 1,000%, which are more mid-cap to lower cap coins, or mid-cap more importantly. I think the remainder of the market will begin to take the forefront of the wheel here. And the key to alt season at the moment, I'm going to stick to my guns as I did in the previous video and say that nothing's changed, but I think more has developed, and this could very well be the key for us if we see something along these lines at the very least. I think simple terms, pullback, alt season, cycle ends, because total needs to get there. I am not satisfied until total gets up into this region, but I think this could be an end of year pump. One little shakeout for mankind, and then kaboom, the finale comes in. Should be on the cusp of a rollover. Let's see what happens.